Hey guys, alright, so I thought I'd put together a video tutorial, basically like an introduction to Autodesk Remake. Now there is a bunch of awesome tutorials on the Autodesk Remake YouTube channel, but I thought I'll be showing you how I use Remake and just going over some of the tools and the user interface. So it's really easy. The user interface doesn't have too many buttons and tools. That's basically going to be melting your brain. So it's a really easy program to use, very intuitive, and I just thought that I'll put this together because I created the documentation for photogrammetry, and I thought it would be cool just to include, just a basic breakdown of Remake itself. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so once you guys open Autodesk Remake, you're going to be presented with the following screen. Now obviously you're not going to have all of these models here because these are models that I've created. You're basically just going to have the spacemouse.rcm model, which is the default photogrammetry model that comes with Autodesk Remake. So you can actually open that up, analyze it, look at all of the details, and maybe even use some of the editing tools to enhance it further if you just wanted to play around with it, or see what photogrammetry is capable of. They've put that demo model over there. But anyway, this is what you're presented with, and just to go over this quickly, you'll see top right we've got the Autodesk Remake icon over here, which is also basically a shortcut for these two icons over here. So you can open your scans, or we can create 3D using photos. So this is the meat and potatoes of this program, because this is what's going to be responsible for creating these 3D objects that have been created using photogrammetry. So another thing over here at the bottom, if you want to, you can save your projects to the Autodesk cloud as well. They give you some cloud storage, which I think is 25. Yeah, it's 25 gigabytes. I've got that located here at the bottom. You guys can't see that because of the way I've cropped my screen recording, but it says the available storage 25 gigs, so you've got some nice cloud storage there as well. And that's that. So we'll be heading on to the next part. I'll be showing you how we actually process images and how we get it ready for the photogrammetry or the reconstruction process. Okay, so let's get started, guys. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Photos button here by Create 3D. And it's going to ask you if you want to create your objects offline or online. I do this offline. If you're going to do it online, basically Autodesk Remake is going to send you a message when your model's ready to be used. But I just usually do everything offline, as you can see over here. So I'll click on offline, and then you're going to be presented with this window. And again, there's obviously some buttons and features here that I never use. If you guys want to know what every single button means, you can just find some Autodesk Remake documentation. You can Google that. You'll be able to find it really easily if you want to go more in depth and just trying to understand what every single button means. But I'm going to be showing you how I use the program. Anyway, once you're in this window, here on the left, you can see, obviously we can click back to go back to the previous window, but we've got add photos over here. So we're going to click on this to add our photos before we process them. There's a validation process which is basically going to check the quality of your images. So if some images are blurry, or maybe some images were like really out of focus, it's going to obviously select the best images for you to process to basically enable the reconstruction process to not encounter any errors. So if you want to, you can run that validation process, but that's going to be available once we add our photos. And then we have the beta feature. Now I'm actually not able to use this. You'll see it says boost up to 50 gigapixels. I think this allows you, if I remember, there's a 250 image limit, but you can use this to actually upload more images for processing. But you'll see if I click on that, you need a minimum of 64 gigabytes of RAM, guys, which is quite insane if you ask me. Your average computer, average user does not have 64 gigabytes of memory on their PC. I've currently got 16, so I don't even use this. And then this bottom icon over here, reproject textures from photos. I haven't used this, but I think this comes in handy, like if you've maybe modified your photogrammetry object, like maybe you've cut off some areas, removed some geometry, smooth in some areas, you can basically reproject those textures back onto the object. I'm not 100% sure, but you can check the documentation. I haven't used that, but anyway, we're going to click on here, click anywhere to browse for files or folders. So just left click over here, go and find your photos. Now I took these pictures of this wooden basket that's now garden outside, and you can see I've shot in that sequence, the front, top down, and then I laid it on its side, which would be the front side, to capture what's underneath and the detail and the depth that goes in the inside of the basket as well. So what I would do from here is just select all of these photos, click on open. It's going to load them, and as you can see, validate is now available. So you can click on that. It says you want to start photo validation process. That's if you really want to see if there's any bad images here that could maybe cause some downstream errors. But if you followed my guide and you know that you should try and always keep your photos in focus, you probably don't even have to click on that. And then from here, you're going to click on create model. Brings up this window. Now the quality, if you want things to go a little bit quicker, you can just leave it on standard. But I always go with ultra, and then you want to put a name here, so I'll say basket. And then option smart crop and smart texture. Honestly, I've never ever ticked these boxes. Again, find documentation, guys, if you want to find out what this actually does. Like I said, I'm just showing you how I use it. And then I put mine on ultra. Surface I put on detail, my resolution on fine. I find that this gives me the best results. And then obviously you want to generate textures, so you want to make sure that's ticked. And that should be good to go. And photogrammetry is a very CPU intensive process. So I've got 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I've got 96 photos. This will probably take about maybe 30 or maybe even 45 minutes to do the reconstruction process. So obviously the more RAM you have on your PC, the quicker this is going to go. So I wouldn't recommend anything lower than 16 gigabytes unless you want to wait really long. If you've got 64 gigabytes, awesome. This is going to be really quick for you. And then from there, just click on start, and it's going to go through the whole process. So you'll see if I click start, it's going to say this may take a while to process. Do you really want to continue? Then you'll click on yes, and you'll see a percentage there, and you just wait till it reaches 100%, and then your object is automatically going to be shown. Alright, and I'm going to move on to that and show the reconstructed basket. Okay, so this is my final scanned object, and I've left everything raw in the scene. You'll see there's a lot of junk that's been scanned as well, but we've got our basket over here. It's good for the purpose that I'm going to be using it for. I'm not really going to be seeing underneath that much. There is some errors over there that I could fix as well. You can see some of looks like the background got included there as well, but I've got my basket. You can see it's got the depth in here as well. I'll probably put a pot plant in there if it was in a scene. It's got all the textures applied onto it, so it seemed to do a pretty decent job by scanning this object. And I consider this particular object to be a little bit complex to try and reconstruct, just because of all of the intricacies and all this layering and texture detail. But it seemed to do a pretty decent job. Not too bad. This could be an asset that I could use. So like I said, I'm leaving everything raw for now, and I just want to explain this interface, the editor interface here for your scans. Now I'll get onto the left side in the next video. I want to explain these bottom icons here first, which you guys cannot see. I think you should be able to see it now. There we go. Alright, so let me start over here. Alright, so as you can see, we've got the undo and redo buttons, but I just use shortcuts to do that. And then we've got this options button over here. Now there's a lot of stuff in here that I actually never ever use. So again, documentation, if you guys want to go deeper into this, it's not really useful for me. It's just this one's actually pretty cool. If you click on this, it shows your camera positions. So it's going to show you the sequence you actually shot in. So you can see there was a top down and there was a front sequence. Now the front side sequence has got a pretty weird orientation, because I actually shot from the front, This thing was on its side and I moved around. So anyway, if you just want to see your camera sequence, you can view that. Pretty cool. And let's go back there, and you can change the size by using the plus and minus keys. You can view ortho views as well as some orthographic views. So these orthographic views can come in handy because sometimes when you're using perspective and you're trying to cut out certain areas, the perspective can sometimes mess up the way you actually looking at the object. So maybe you think you're cutting something straight, but then when you go down there, it's going to be like skew. But then again, honestly, I don't even use the ortho views, guys. I just come into the scene straight like this, and I'm able to remove whatever I need to remove without worrying about too much. So again, I'm teaching you the way I use this program. You've got an orbit gimbal. Never use that. Orthographic projection, never use. Set the theme. If you wanted a black theme for the interface, you could do that, but I just leave it white. It just looks a lot cleaner. And then environment toggle. So if you want to remove this environment entirely or bring it back, you can do that. There's also stuff like a bounding box and a coordinate grid. But again, stuff that I don't really use. So I'm going to turn off the camera positions. Right, now this next icon here, the visualization icon, I actually do use, and it's a really awesome icon. When you click on this, you're going to get this drop down or drop up and you'll see there's a lot of viewing visualization options. We can view the solid, which is awesome because we get to see the raw scan of our object. So you can see all the details that were scanned in here. It's pretty cool. And we've got the solid with the wireframe, and if we zoom in there, we can see that wireframe, and we can see it's extremely dense and made up of like tons and tons of triangles. And you can put that back on textured, and texturing does a lot of good for photogrammetry. It hides a lot of the scanned, detailed and scanned areas that look really messed up, like here at the bottom there wasn't that much detail captured there, but the texture, that's the one thing about photogrammetry that's awesome, is the texture quality that you receive is pretty good, and it can hide a lot of really ugly geometry by covering it up with textures. Then you can obviously view the textured with the wireframe and an X-ray view if you guys want to see that as well. So pretty cool tab. I just leave mine on textured. Right, the next one is your navigation tools. I should have probably mentioned this right at the beginning. I'm using my right mouse to pan or orbit around the object. I use my left mouse button. Sorry, I need to first activate first person navigation mode, because in first person navigation mode, if I use the left mouse button, it's as if I'm tilting my head and looking around this 3D environment. So there's that, and then the mouse wheel obviously to zoom in and out, and also if you click and hold your middle mouse button, you can also pan or move around your scene like that. So really easy navigation, and then you can fit the entire scene to your view. Okay, and then this last one over here is selection, which is really important. We'll start with the first one, the brush. And you'll see as soon as I clicked on brush, there's some other options that pop up. We can add to the selection or remove from it, so that remove just acts as an eraser. And this icon over here is the brush size. So you can see right now it's quite small, or we can make the brush size quite large to cover larger areas. And then we can invert that selection as well. And like that would be handy if there was maybe a small area that we were masking off. So let's say we were masking here and we wanted to delete everything else in the scene, but just keep that. We could invert that and then press delete on our keyboard, and now it's just that that's been kept. So I'm press Control Z, undo that, and then yeah, it's the paint selection option, the brush. You got the classic lasso tool, which I use a lot. It's just quick and easy to use for selecting areas that I want to delete. And then you've got the window option, which is basically like a square rectangular selection. So yeah, that's basically all the tools at the bottom. Like I said, I don't really use this options, only to view cameras. I use visualization, navigation, I use shortcut, selection. I'll use all three of these, but I tend to use lasso the most. And again, add and remove selection as well. Or you can invert or just isolate that selection to work just on what has been selected. So yeah, that's that bottom piece, guys. So let's move on to the next area. Okay, so while we still have these tools fresh in our mind right now, I'm gonna clean up the scene, right? Like I said, sometimes when you guys do scans, actually a lot of the times you're gonna get sometimes just random geometry that's been included from the background. So let's clean this up. I just want this object in my scene. So for this, I'm gonna use the window tool, and this entire area over here, I'm just gonna hold my left mouse button, hold it down, drag out a box, selects everything, and just press delete on my keyboard. And I'm going to do that for the rest of these pieces as well. And just angle this like that, and delete all of this unnecessary geometry that we don't need in our scene. So there we go. I've removed those pieces. Now there's obviously some other stuff that we can do on here as well, but when I'm actually fixing those areas, we're gonna have to know how to use these tools on the side. Okay, so we've got our object here on its own, and yeah, I think we're good to go. We can start messing around with the buttons here on the left, so let's do that. Alright guys, so let's start with this left panel. There's a lot of different features here. But again, this program is really simple. It doesn't have too many features in it, or too many buttons that you need to learn. And I'm going to be showing you the ones that I use the most. Again, so there's features here that I don't even touch because I don't need them. They're not really that useful to me. Again, you can just look at the documentation if you want to learn about every single feature in this program. But anyway, let's start at the top. We've got the model settings. So we can set our scene up right. So if for any reason maybe this object's lying on its side, or it's just not in the correct orientation, we can rotate that. Either rotate the vertical, horizontal axis, or rotate along the views axis, or you can pick a surface as well. So if you wanted to angle it, basically angle this in the direction that arrow is facing. So that's just another way to position your object, but I'm going to undo that. Let me just angle this, go to the orientation tool and angle this, and once you're done and you've got your object ready, I'm just going to click on apply, and that should be fine. Oh, and as you can see, there was still another piece of the geometry in the scene, so just select that, delete that, and that should be fine. Okay, and sometimes you're going to see like these really low resolution textures, but sometimes if you zoom in, it starts to show them better. And like I said, this scan is it's decent. It's not perfect by no means. Actually, whatever you scan is never ever going to be perfect, guys. Sometimes you'll get a good base to work with that you can use, modify in ZBrush. Sometimes you'll get really good scans, like with my sneaker scans. Sometimes I get just like straight out of the box, really awesome scans that I can just modify very briefly in ZBrush. Like I said, I'm just using this as an example to show you how I also clean up these models within Remake. Anyway, you can set the scene up right. You can set the scales, the units. As I can see over here, this is still not rotated 100%. So it can get a bit tricky. Well, not really, but again, guys, you can even rotate this in your own 3D program. You don't have to do this in Remake, but I'm just going to do it anyway just to show you guys. But like I said, you can set the scales units. If you need it in a particular scale for another program, millimeters, centimeters, and then you'll just click on set and set the coordinate system. I don't use this. Nope, I don't use that at all. And yeah, let's move on to the next one. The next one, we've got edit. Now this is what I would call the meat and potatoes of the editor section, because this is where you've got some really awesome tools for cleaning up your models. So the slice and fill, I'll have to show you how I use that on another object. We can actually use it on this one, but I wanted to show you the best representation for using that object on something else. So actually let me do that right now. I'm going to just save this as, say, wooden basket 3. Let that save out. And just to show you the best demonstration of the slice and fill, I want to make sure that I'm opening up the correct object for demonstration. So I've got this bucket over here that I've scanned as well. And now you can see it's got some holes in it, and the actual bucket does have these holes in it, so it just adds a nice, very worn aesthetic to it. But anyway, slice and fill does exactly what it says. It's going to slice a piece off the object and then fill it. So this can come in handy like with areas like this where it's hollow on the bottom. You can see I've got this mat that's included. So if I click on slice and fill, you can choose to fill this or not fill it at all. And if you're not filling it, that comes in handy for another feature which is called extrude. But anyway, we're going to use slice and fill, and it brings up this gizmo. The outer section over here determines how far you want to cut off the geometry, and this inner gizmo is going to determine the angle you want to cut it from. So you can see I can do an angular cut like that as well. But I'm actually going to just undo that, go back to slice and fill, and let me bring that down. So let's say I want to get rid of that mat. I can cut that out, or cut it off entirely, and I want to make sure it's on fill, and click on apply. So it's going to slice the model, and it fills that bottom piece. So basically it just closes that off, and now we've got this bucket on its own. Obviously I just have to remove those little small pieces of geometry, but now we've got a bucket on its own without the mat, and there's no texture on the bottom. But of course, if this is going to be sitting on something, it doesn't really matter. But that's how you use the slice and fill. Alright, now your surface tools. Actually, you know what, I'm going to go back to the previous object that I was using because that's what we started with. So I've just demonstrated slice and fill on this object to show you guys. So let's move on to the other tools using the other object. Alright guys, so I've brought in another one of my scans, which was a sneaker. And again, I'm trying to show you these features on objects where I think it would be demonstrated the best. So the next one is surface tools. Now surface tools really come in handy. It's basically, you can see here, we can sculpt and actually modify our object further. So by visualization, I'm going to go back to solid to see the raw scan over here, and you can see a lot of details being scanned in, but we can do some cleanup here as well. So you'll see with sculpt, if you want to, we can adjust the brush size over here, and then we can choose the operation if we want this to pull or push. So maybe if something's sticking out over here, like let's say maybe there's an area, oh, it's been a little bit stubborn. I don't know why it's doing that. It doesn't want me to go to push. Alright, there we go. It's just a little bit glitchy, but anyway, I can let's see, we can adjust the strength and adjust the brush size, but you can actually push the geometry away or back in like this. So if there's pieces that are really sticking out, you can just fix that directly in Autodesk Remake, and then when you actually export this out, it's going to rebake those textures and try and reapply those textures on these modified areas as best as possible. So you got push and pull. You can choose to go flat or rounded. I don't know why this thing's being so glitchy right now, but anyway, you can go to smooth. This also really comes in handy. If there's areas that you feel has maybe too much noise, we can do exactly what it says over there and just smoothen those areas out. So it's another feature that can really come in handy for you guys, as you can see. And then obviously once you're done with all of this, you can just click on commit, and it's going to apply that to the model. So this is just one way to do some very basic cleanup. Like stuff like this you can do in ZBrush using the smooth brush, but you can actually smoothen out areas in Autodesk Remake directly, or use that push and pull option to modify the model a little bit further as well. Alright. Okay, so I've brought in another object that I've scanned, which is a seashell, and we've covered the slice and fill and the surface tools. Now the next one is delete selection, and I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to use this time I'm going to use lasso, and let's select this entire area over here. Once that's selected on your keyboard or whatever object you're using, just select an area on your object and then press delete to remove it. So you can see over there now we've got this hole that's looking straight down into our object. So that brings us, oh, by the way, let me undo that. I use the shortcut over there, make a selection, and then you can come here and say delete selection. Okay, anyway, so the next option is fill holes. So this really comes in handy. If you've got holes on your objects that have been created from the scans, we can actually fill those holes. So you'll see I'll click on fill holes. It's going to go into this workspace, and you need to select a boundary. So wherever that hole is, you'll see it automatically selects the boundary by that hole. So I'll click on that, and it's going to ask me if I want to go for something flat or smooth. Now depending on the type of object you have, for something like this, the shell, we could go with something flat, and then maybe use that those brush options like the push and pull to give it some kind of detail. But I'm going to go with smooth, and it's going to run through the process, and there we go. So it's filled that hole. If I click on textured, it tries it fills that hole, that geometry, and then it grabs, I think, the most prominent color on the object and fills it with that. So that's one way to fill the hole. And like I said, you can go back to the surface tools over here and use the push and pull to maybe modify this further so that it doesn't look as bad as it did previously. So like I said, maybe give it a little bit more shape, but obviously it doesn't have all this texture quality like the other stuff. It's just a flat color, but something like that you can actually edit in Photoshop and use like a clone stamp tool to fill that area so that it's got some texture on it. Okay, so fill holes, extremely useful. If you've got holes on your object, you'll see I can make them all over the place over here. Let me add to selection. I can make them all over. Go to delete selection, go back, fill holes, and holding down shift I can select multiple holes that I want to fill, and then you can choose flat or smooth. So let's see, there we go, I chose smooth. So if I go back to textured, all those holes that were on there are now filled. So like I said, extremely useful feature. You'll see there's some holes in the bottom, so we'd have to do the same thing here as well, but extremely useful feature if you've got holes that you want to fill on your object. Alright, and the next one is smooth boundary. Now I'm going to make another hole over here. Now smooth boundary tries its best. Well, it does exactly what it says. It smooths the boundary of that geometry. So if I select smooth boundary, we've got a open area over here, and it's usually again with holes. So if I select that boundary and click apply, you can see, look at the before, it's all jagged. So I can select that, apply that to smoothen it out, and then I can go to maybe fill holes, and this time let's try flat. Let's see what flat does. There we go. So you can see that it just makes it look a lot neater. Really awesome feature as well that you guys should play around with is that smooth boundary. And then we'll get on to the next one, which is bridge gaps and extrude. Okay, so the bridge option, bridge gaps, again, it does exactly what it says, but I don't use this too often. But just to show you guys, I'm going to make a selection here again with the lasso, and let's cut a hole over here. Let's use our smooth boundary just to make that a little bit cleaner. Now if we go to bridge gaps, it says select two edges, but you can select this edge, and then again we can choose how we want to bridge, if we want it to be flat or smooth. So if you say smooth, it's basically going to create a bridge between the two. So if you can select an entire area like this, and on this side, and click on smooth, and it's going to bridge between that selection as well. So it's just another way to, it's like where you can selectively close holes, I would say, or bridge gaps, or stuff like that. Yeah, I don't use it too much, but it can come in handy when you need it. So I'm just going to undo that. Okay, and then our last one is extrude. Now remember I said earlier with slice and fill, so I'm going to actually close this, and I'm going to go back to my bucket over here. Now with this bucket I'm going to use slice and fill, but this time I'm not going to fill anything. So I'm going to cut here at the bottom and click apply, and it's basically going to slice all of that off, and the bottom piece is now open. So with extrude, we need to select a boundary. So again, it's looking for open holes, boundaries over here. This is our biggest boundary, and then just like the slice and fill, this is now going to determine from here till here is going to determine our extrude. So if I come all the way down from here, we're going to have a really long extrude. So it's basically going to extrude geometry out from there and then fill it. So flush to plane, offset boundary, and we want to fill the extrusion. So if I click on extrude, you can see there it tries to fill that now. It doesn't take the texture detail from here. I honestly never use that extrude option. I've never encountered a time when I need it, but there you go, guys. If you need it, you can basically extrude geometry off from your scan. Alright, so it's time to head on to retopologize. So retopologize right now, if I want to, I can select the entire object and I can decimate this right now within this workspace. So you can see we currently at 1,122,652, which is really crazy for such a simple object. So decimation is basically going to reduce the polygon count and try and retain as much detail as possible. So you can see we can bring it all the way down to even 11,000, which is pretty amazing if you ask me. So this decimation really comes in handy for reducing the polygon count. So, but I usually do this at the end when I know I'm finished with my object. So I can make a selection. I'm going to actually activate solid with wireframe. I can make a selection on here like that. Like let's say there's some detail, like there's maybe way too many polygons in an area you're never going to see. You can select that, and then we can re-triangulate that selection. We can subdivide it. So maybe if that area has maybe way too little polygons, we can subdivide that to bring up the polygon count, or we can decimate the selection. So this is really cool. I can bring the decimation down to something like that. Click on decimate model. I'm not sure how long this is going to take, but there we go. So we can have other areas more dense than some. So like I said, if there's an area that's really hidden that you're not going to see, like areas like this that are so dense, we can just select that and reduce that polygon count. So this is all about optimization to get the best polygon count possible. So that's retopologize. Simple, easy to use. And then analyze. Honestly, I don't use any of these features, guys. The only one that I say that I would use here is the detect and fix model issues. So it's going to try its best to find any issues on your model. So it starts looking for defects, and then it's going to bring up a like a dialog box that's going to say you have maybe 30 open holes or broken pieces on the mesh, and you can just automatically fix that for you. As you can see there, it's telling me I have one hole, I've got 24 intersections over here, and we can choose to remove all and let this, basically it's like an automated process that tries to fix errors for you, so that can actually come in handy. Measure distance, mesh report, compare two models. I never use these tools, guys, so you're gonna have to check documentation for that. And yeah, so those were the really important tools, mainly here by edit, and retopologize can also come in handy, but it's mainly the edit section. And then yeah, we're gonna head on to the next part. Okay guys, so I've covered, I think, yeah, probably the most important tools, definitely here under the edit, these last three icons. Export will come to last. You'll see once you're done with your object. Oh, by the way, there is a shortcut menu that you guys can use as well. I don't really use it, but if you just right click in this open space, you get this wheel toggle, so you can change a display or your selection and all of that. I'm mentioning that right at the end, but you don't really need to use that, guys, so it's fine. But anyway, once you're done, you can actually choose the 3D printers. Can go through the process to check for 3D print issues. And obviously I don't own a 3D printer, so I've never used that. Or you can publish this to the Autodesk Remake gallery, the online gallery. But now the next part, which is really important, is the export. But before I go there, I just want to show you guys one of the sneakers I scanned, where I said earlier that literally the reconstruction results were basically perfect. The only thing I had to fix here was the inside of the shoe, and you see errors like this, I just paint them away in Photoshop. But everything else here I didn't even tamper with, guys. This was like a straight scan that it gave me, which I was pretty happy with. So taking the photos in the right sequence can give you some pretty cool results. You'll see, oh yeah, there was actually a little bit of a shiny surface on this material part, so that actually got included. This can be not ideal for certain people, but stuff like this can even be fixed in Photoshop, guys. Like I said, you're going to get results out of here that are sometimes going to be great, sometimes going to be average, but you can fix them with ZBrush or just some post work with Photoshop. Anyway, once you guys are done with your object, we can go to export. So again, really important area, because now we need to get this object out of here so we can use it in other programs. So we can choose to just export an image, export a video. I think this allows you to create like a turntable. I don't use either one of these options, I don't need them, but this I do need. So you click on this, and now you've got export model. So we can do a quick export. We can just choose low, medium or high and optimize for whatever format you guys need it in, as you can see. But I actually don't use quick export, I go to advanced. So on advanced, you can choose your coordinate system, if it's a scene, world or Y up. I just usually leave this on default, and then again, here's our decimation. So you can choose to decimate this manually to whatever percentage we want. Textures, we definitely want to click that. We want to keep that on rebake, because like I said, sometimes when you modifying areas on your mesh that you've cut off and fold and all of that, it's going to rebake those textures and try and reapply those textures a little bit more accurately. And then the size over here is, you can choose to bake maps, 8K maps, 2K, 4K. I usually just go for 4K maps in this case, and as soon you'll see there, whatever size we choose to put it on for the map we want to bake, it usually adjusts to. So let's bring that back to 100, and I usually just go to 4K and I bake the diffuse, which is this going to be the color map, or the texture map for our object, and then the normal, which is our normal map, which is that bake detail as well. And you can bake a displacement if you want, and then you'll click on export, select your folder, and again it's going to take a little bit of a while, some time just to export out, and then you're good to go. Alright, Alright guys, so we are done with Autodesk Remake. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this and I'm going to show you guys something. Remember I said that this can sometimes be an error because it's got that shiny texture baked into it, but I took this over to Octane Render and it wasn't too much of an issue. I actually managed to get a pretty uniform look and feel in those areas, and you'll notice that these sneakers were also, and these ones are black. But anyway, once you've exported your object, you can see over here I've got all the pictures I took of the sneaker, and once I've saved it, you've got your RCM file. But once you've exported, you go into get, where is it, your file. Export it as, well, I exported mine as an OBJ. You go into, again, these are all additional files, guys. I'll explain these just now, but you're going to get an OBJ. This is going to be your texture file, which is crazy. Like, it's split up into so many different pieces that all get put together onto your object. So I'll show you. We can actually go from this texture map to something more organized like this, which makes it a lot easier to paint away certain errors on your scans. Now I'm going to mention right now that these techniques I have learned from Ezekiel Grand, and I want to give him all the credit. He's an amazing artist. Learned some cool photogrammetry techniques from him, and again, I just feel like it's beneficial to also reshare knowledge like this, but I'm also making it known right now that I'm giving him credit for the techniques that I'm about to show you guys on how you can get a lot more cleaner maps like this instead of working with crazy stuff like this. You honestly can't even work with this. Like, it's insane. There's so many different pieces here. If you have something like this, it's a lot more identifiable. You can see where the different areas are. So I'll be covering that in the next video. And like I said, you'll have your OBJ, this map, and then probably a material map. And you can see what I did was I created a new one, a retopologized version, retopologized OBJ with the normal map, and a high-res OBJ with the map. So let's cover that next with ZBrush. Okay guys, so I've actually come to the conclusion that, you know what, I'm not going to be showing the exact same techniques that Ezekiel Grand has showed me, because it just doesn't feel right if I'm just going to be copying, just doing a blatant copy of exactly what he's showing on his YouTube. So instead, what I'm going to be doing is, you can see over here, his name is Ezekiel Grand. He's a good friend of mine, but again, just to get people to watch the original video of how he does it, you guys can go and check this out. And like I said, you've exported your model now. I've showed you those OBJs and the maps you need, and he's going to show you how to get, basically do like a retopo and fix the UVs and get something more manageable to work with. So go ahead, check him out, Ezekiel Grand. It's for free on YouTube right now. Go check out his video, watch the entire process, give him some love, because he's helped me a lot to get really cleaner and more organized objects. So yeah, that would basically wrap up the process, guys, for photogrammetry. I've explained the entire UI, how to prepare your images for processing and reconstruction. We've gone into the program. I've explained these bottom icons here over here to you, the selection and visualization, the model, this tab here on the left. I've showed you how to export this out, and then I've recommended Ezekiel Grand's video for doing the retopology and fixing those UVs. So we've reached the end of this tutorial, guys, and best of luck with your photogrammetry journey. Thanks for picking up my documentation on photogrammetry and looking at how I do photogrammetry. It's a really awesome piece of technology that you guys can mess around with. And if you've got any results that you've scanned, feel free to send them through to me, guys. I'd love to see what you guys have come up with. So I hope this has been useful for you guys. And as always, stay tuned for some more tutorials. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.